Hi there, and welcome to another installation of the Charter Schools Oral History Project. My name is Michael Cousins, and today's guest is Mr. Andy DeVries. Andy has been part of the charter schools movement for nearly 25 years. He's the current board president at Grand River Prep High School, and he has been with Excel Charter Academy on their board as well, both here in the Grand Rapids area. Andy, thanks for being with us today.
You're welcome. Thanks for asking.
So we are going to go back into 93, 94, right when the idea of charter schools and school choice is coming to Michigan. What do you remember back then about first hearing that term school choice and what you thought about that?
I didn't hear anything about it. I have no recollection of the term charters.
Okay.
School of choice didn't appear on my radar screen, but what did appear was the fact that my friends and I had a very successful business, and we were having a terribly difficult time finding high school graduates who were business ready. We weren't looking for college grads. We were looking for entry-level employees, and we couldn't find employees at that time that had the reading skills and math skills to work for us.
Okay.
And I was terribly frustrated. And it was just a matter of chance or maybe fate that my wife and I had dinner with a person who became very involved in charters, and his name was J.C. Heisinger. And I had met him many years before through the Rotary Club, and we had become friends. So going out for dinner with him or lunch wasn't anything out of the order. And he asked me in the scope or in the frame of our conversation how business was going. And I said, well, we're doing really well, except at entry level. We can't find support people. And he said, why? I said, they don't have the math skills or the communication skills that are necessary to work for us. Mm-hmm. And these are skills that should be, we should be expect this from a high school graduate. And he ruminated that the same was, he was facing the same situation. And we talked about education. He didn't know that before business, I was in education. And I shared some of my educational experiences. My first experience was as a substitute teacher in the Grand Rapids public school system.
Okay.
I'm a very big person. I was hired because I was big. And my job was to keep order or herd cats.
Gotcha.
And I hate to use that terminology, but that's pretty much what it was. And it was terribly difficult. I saw very little education taking place. The notes that the teacher had left were poor at best. Mm. And so it was roll on your own. And I became a bit disillusioned. My car was damaged and defaced. I walked in on drug deals in the bathrooms. It was just no example of what education should be like.
You had lost some faith in the environment
Well,
around education at that time.
I thought that my noble goal was to make a difference.
Sure.
And I was holding the fort in a losing cause. It felt like Vietnam.
Wow.
You know, like, why are we doing this and we're not going anywhere?
So JC in that dinner comes to you with a new idea. JC
And he said, had you heard, I'm glad you asked that. He said, had you heard about this concept, or have you heard? And I said, no. And he had just heard about it. Yeah. So he explained it to me. And at that time, as my memory serves, our wives lost interest because we were so enamored with this idea that we stayed until the restaurant closed. And I remember going outside, standing in a light drizzle on the corner of Ottawa and Pearl, just talking about the possibility of a school run by parents where education was at the fore, rather than having a school. And I don't want to demean unions because in some cases they make good sense. Mm-hmm. But schools run by unions that have rules that really don't help kids learn. and a school where there was an end means and a way to get there. That why are we sending these kids to school? So they will learn this and be ready for a future. And I said, how will this happen? He said, I don't know, but I'm going to find out. And I said, I'd love to be involved, because after that 1 year of public school teaching, I fortunately was hired by a private Christian school, and I taught for 12 years, and I loved every minute of it. In fact, there were some times that I thought, wow, I'm getting paid for doing this. Now, on the other side of the fence, my wife was also teaching in a public school. And she was following rules that didn't have a whole lot to do with teaching. And she said, out of frustration, more than once, if I could only just teach instead of do all this other stuff. And I said, welcome to my world, because I'm teaching and the kids are learning.
Yeah.
And I thought, wouldn't that be really cool?
Yeah. And that's what that conversation sounded like to you.
That's what that conversation sounded like, yes.
So you leave that dinner, JC goes off, he comes back, and JC Heising, we're talking about, who founds NHA.
Right.
And then he comes back to you down the road and asks if you want to be part of Excel Charter Academy. Is that correct?
No, before that, you're close. But what happened was I volunteered. I said, if you find out more about this, I'll help you on the educational side.
Okay.
I can't help you financially, but I will give my time and my talent to helping you get this rolling.
Okay. And how did you do that?
When he came back to me was, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
He said, but we need a school board. Will you be a board member?
And you said absolutely.
I thought, yes, I will.
So you joined the board. The school opens in 1995.
Yes.
It's one of Grand Valley's first schools that we charter. And those first years, I'm sure, were maybe rough. You know, charter schools, and the idea of that in Michigan, there were a lot of people who were against it. What do you recall about those first few years and showing the community what Excel Charter could do?
I felt like General Custer.
Okay.
I was a target.
Oh.
I felt like there was a target and arrows were slung. The media was almost, as I recall, the media was almost unanimous in downgrading or degrading the idea. The idea of schools for profit rose, with nobody thinking through who's going to build these schools, where will that money come from, what tax base is going to support this, what bonds are going to be issued to get the land or condemn the land. All that is on the back of the operation that gets these schools going. What will they do for governance? And that's where Grand Valley was a huge asset. So having taught in a private Christian school, my friends thought of me as the enemy, pulling potential students away from the private Christian schools. The public school side thought we were the enemy because we were going to ruin education. And we didn't have a lot of support, except for the parents.
Okay.
And I remember when we first offered entry, it was kind of like, I'm trying to recall, I think we had ping pong balls with numbers on them.
Probably for a lottery.
For a lottery.
Yeah, to see what students would be there.
We had some kind of lottery. I don't remember exactly how that transpired. But what I do remember is it was at Waterfront Place, which is right down the street. And we were in the lobby, and I'm guessing we had room for less than 100. And there were more parents, significantly more parents, than the number of spaces we had available. And I remember hearing parents praying that their student's number would pop.
Wow.
I remember seeing moms having their fingers crossed and their arms crossed and hoping that their children were going to have a chance. At that point, I knew we were doing the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's powerful.
It was.
You have a room packed.
Yes, packed with people, and one of the rules, if you will, was that if your son got in, then the siblings would also. But as I recall, I think we only started with K and 1.
Okay.
We may have been K1 and 2, but then we added. And fortunately, we had a school board or a school principal that I had known in high school and college and kind of recruited. I knew he was very upset. He was the principal of a public school in Grand Rapids, and he too was frustrated by not being able to be engaged in teaching.
Mm.
And so he left that and came to our school, and his guidance was invaluable. And we had a packed house in terms of student population. There were some very disappointed parents whose children didn't get chosen or by lottery. But for the most part, there was a lot of screaming and yelling and celebration.
Celebrating, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it was a seminal moment in a lot of lives. And then each year we added until we ran out of space. And then we had a building on Breton and Burton with hardly any parking. And I know that when we moved in, a lot of neighbors were aghast at the idea of a charter coming into their neighborhood.
Oh.
So we had neighbors not wanting us to join in. Interestingly enough, some of them, after talking with us and listening to us, decided to give us a chance, sent their kids, and one person eventually became a school board member and is now the school board president and a big banner waiver for the charter movement.
So a lot of parents and families are immediately seeing the benefits that come with a school like Excel.
After the first couple of years.
Okay. So they're helping you drive the conversation
Yes.
positively. How are you and other board members and maybe staff members of Excel Charter Academy working to help the community at large understand the benefits that could come there? Because you're saying parents are invested, but we still had other organizations, the media doesn't seem to be against you. How did you help change that narrative, or at least stop the negativity coming your way?
That's a difficult question for me to get my arms around, because as we were growing, the potential for us growing faster than our support could keep us going. It was like, it was sink or float.
Okay.
And how many lifesavers do we have? And where is the curriculum coming from? And what's the guiding focus of the curriculum? And we decided to go with the Greek cardinal virtues. And every month we would focus on one of those. So we had very specific end goals. It was like a football game, and we would progress on the field, and the fans were watching, but we weren't working so hard with the fans, we were working with the players.
Gotcha.
And as the players did better, the fans got more involved. And one of the things that J.C. Heisinger did initially was he thought that we needed to get the parents involved. So one of the criteria was that you as a parent would be involved in the operations of the school. You might push a broom. You might check out books in the library. You might read to first graders or second graders, but you would be involved. And we saw a lot of parents getting involved. And they became our biggest cheerleaders.
You're really making a community hub.
Yes,
You're inviting
exactly.
people in.
That's exactly what happened.
So you talked about the demand increasing over time and the fans, or if you will,
Mm-hmm.
the community building in, and that probably spawned the creation, or at least the idea of building a high school, because Excel charter is K through 8.
Well,
and
before
so
that, we're going K through 3, K through 4,
Adding a
K
grade.
through 5,
Yep.
and we're thinking, do we do a middle school?
Okay.
Because we had outgrown the capacity on Burton and Breton. We were literally trying to put 5 pounds in a 4-pound bag. I mean, it just didn't fit anymore. Everywhere you turned, you ran into bodies. So then Mr. Heisinger purchased a piece of land on Breton, just north of the mall on 44th and Breton. And I remember being asked to man a shovel, to turn the first shovel full of dirt. And there were a bunch of constituents, and there were some people from the political parties who also were interested, because now we've shown that this is the real thing, that students are learning, absent fear of fighting, of any type of reprisal from other kids in the classrooms or in the halls, and it was safe. We had created a safe environment to learn. And we had banished or tried to banish fear of failure from outside sources.
Okay.
And I remember thinking there'd be about 4 or 5 people there, and they had a widescreen photo, I think I still have it at home, with hundreds of people there, all cheering. And I thought, yes, it was just like that first time with the lottery. We're turning dirt. And we built the first middle school. And then we transferred the entire operation to that school, and it was K through 8.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then we found out that there was a tremendous groundswell of opinion from the parents, not so much from the students, but the parents. Where will these kids go for high school? And what happened was something that we hadn't planned on. What happened was our 8th grade class sizes started to diminish as students who were thinking, there's no high school in the charter movement, where will we go? If we have to start, for example, Kentwood in 9th grade, we'll know no one.
They needed to,
They
wanted to
needed-
prep themselves.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it made all the sense in the world. So as we're bursting at the seams K through 6, 7 is starting to fall a little bit. In 8th grade, we're seeing quite a dispersal of students to area high schools. And there was a lot of pressure. I don't think we were prepared for that, because with high school comes other things that are more like hobbies in the middle school. They were for us, like sports.
Yeah. New challenges.
Right. So sports for us were probably like advanced intramurals. Mm-hmm. And we played against other charters. And as we became successful, other charters opened, and then we had natural competition, both academically and athletically. And then the plays started, and then the musicals started, and that means more teachers, and the budget already is stretched. So how do you add additional teachers and find a building? And so we struggled with that mightily. We had a spot, Grand Valley, and this is where, Michael, I'm a little bit hazy on how exactly it happened, but between National Heritage Academies and Grand Valley, they found a way to use our charter, our parents' charter, to add a high school, but it couldn't be through National Heritage. Mm-hmm. So that's when PrepNet started, and PrepNet then became the holder. We bargained with PrepNet to take the high school. So we had the same school board for a high school with PrepNet and a K through 8 with NHA.
So you're able to support these students now, K through
12
when you get there.
But we were the only high school at that time, so the other charters started to send them to us.
Okay, they knew the model
Yes.
and the people behind it,
Right.
and the community flocked to
Yes.
you.
And so with K through 8, with the cardinal virtues espoused to all the students and the parents, what were we going to do for high school? And then the decision was to make the school a college preparatory.
Mm-hmm.
So if you intend to go to college, this is where you should go. This really isn't intended for students who see graduation as the end of their educational line. This is for students who wanted to go beyond that. We understood that there are places for students who have no interest beyond college, but we put a couple of caveats in the school handbook that for a student to graduate from Grand River Preparatory, they must be accepted by a college. Mm-hmm. They don't have to go, but they have to be accepted. So when we have a graduating class and we are congratulating them for graduating, we know that every one of those students, without fail, is college accepted. That means that, going back to the original thought, they are ready. If they don't go to college, they are ready to join the workforce, and the workforce can expect that they are fluent and competent in the math and the sciences and the use of grammar and communication skills.
It gets all the way back to that first conversation that you had.
Yes.
So we look at what's going on today. Excel Charter Academy is known for its strong academics compared to its peers. Grand River Preparatory High School, as you said, is sending every student is college accepted, and the class of 2019, no difference. They brought in, I believe, between $3 and $4 million of scholarships they've earned.
Actually, it's over 5.
It's over 5, and they're annually ranked as one of the best high schools in Michigan. Yes. How does that make you feel, knowing that you've been a part of that?
It's like, you're in a contest and you're building a sandcastle, and everybody has the same sand, but you've got tools and they've got tools, and what are you going to do with your tools? And in your mind's eye, you see this finished product, and you keep working toward that finished product, and your sculpture is just drop dead perfect. And I had one of my greatest pleasures of the last few years to be the commencement speaker at our recent graduation. And I looked at all those kids and I thought, this was our dream before they were born. This was our dream before their parents probably even had children. This is so cool. So many things had to work correctly. So many people had to work hard to make this work.
Yeah.
So many times that we fought the media, we fought other parents, we fought competing schools. And there we are with these students. And this is just personal, but I have to sign all the diplomas.
As the board president?
As a board president. Now, I could do it electronically, and I choose not to. I take them home, and I look at every name, and I think about the parents. A lot of the names are hyphenated. Yeah. So maybe there's 2 parents, or different families. Many of them are names that aren't readily recognizable, and you have to work your way through Spanish and Vietnamese and Bosnian to get all the pronunciations correctly. And every one of them was born with parents who had hopes and dreams. And I can look over them and think, the hope and dream for a good education has been successful. We've succeeded in supplying the tools for their hopes and dreams. And I remember that when we originally had our graduation ceremonies, the first couple of years we did them in our old field house. Our field house seats maybe 400 people. It was packed. But every kid could only have 3 or 4. And this is a family thing. So we moved it to the Calvin College field house. And now we have room for 3,000.
Let everyone come celebrate.
Everybody's there.
Yeah.
And moms and dads and grandpas and grandmas and uncles and aunts and neighbors and friends. It's just phenomenal. It's a rainbow of colors and occupations and hopes and dreams.
And while we have all those success stories, I'm sure you'd also admit that there are still plenty of people out there who stand against school choice and charter schools. We're 25 years into school choice in Michigan. What needs to happen in the next 25 years, you think, for it to really latch on and be something that moves this state forward in education?
Wow. You know, the cap, I think, has to be lifted.
It has.
Okay? And politics have to be taken out of it. Because with politics, you get people saying things that are inflammatory. And I have friends that are in education. When I went to school, it was during the Vietnam crisis. And if you were in school, you had a reprieve from the draft. This was before the lottery. And most students, I shouldn't say most, many students who were diametrically opposed to that conflict chose school that probably wouldn't have gone. Many of them went into education. There were very few openings. And a lot of those students who went into education and did get into the public schools haven't done anything else, and they trust the union leaders, and union leaders can be very political because they've got a lot at stake as well.
Sure.
And it's really sorry to watch that and to talk to friends of mine that I've known for 40 or 50 years who are radically opposed to the idea of schools of choice or charters.
Still, even as they know that you've worked for 25 years building this.
And they think that I'm nuts. But I stopped getting into arguments many years ago and create discussion and have points of discussion. And when I see them start to listen and they say, is that true? Well, then I know that what they've heard, they're starting to wrestle with, maybe that's not true. And maybe charters are good. And maybe public schools can work with charter schools because charters are public. And rather than stop the fighting and let the competition make both better, that's my dream.
It's a good dream.
It's not that charters will rule. I think that in the population base of Michigan, I think about 10% of the student body is educated in a charter.
I believe you're right, overall, yes.
That's a lot of kids.
That is.
And what's interesting is that when I look at the dropout rate in our school, it's insignificant compared to our public school peers. It's nowhere near. We keep our kids, and we have a goal, and I'd love to see the public schools accept the idea of a goal to educate rather than to just move them through.
And maybe collaborate. They see the good things you're doing, and we're bouncing ideas off each other, all for the betterment of kids.
And then take best practices. Because there's best practices on the public non-charter side as well as the charter side.
Sure.
And to maybe share facilities And we've got some great teachers, and they've got some great teachers, and to stop having we, they, and have us. That would be my dream for the next 25 years.
Andy, I have one more question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Would you do it all over again?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Without hesitation?
Yes. There were times that I wanted to be done.
Mm-hmm.
There were times when parents would challenge us, why are you doing this? I remember not fondly some parents coming in and videoing everything I said, and videoing board meetings, and a very adversarial type of effect was cast on the board.
Looking for things to use against you, potentially?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And there were times when I thought, it's not worth it. I mean, this is crazy. But then I look back to that first day when everybody said, this is crazy, and I didn't say it was crazy. And we made it happen. But, you know, it couldn't have been done without a cadre of other board members. And I've been doing this for 25 years now. And I've been the board president for all 25 years. But I have people on the board that have been with me that whole time. And we think so alike. And our dreams are the same for kids at large. And we just want things to be better. And this way we're getting there.
Andy DeVries, thank you so much for being with us today.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely.